Hello, friends, family, and fellow bookworms, welcome back. Today I want to review this book that I just finished reading and I really enjoyed, Dracula by Bram Stoker. This is, I think Bram Stoker is the person who originally came up with the idea of vampires. Well, no, I think there were, accounts of vampires before this book, but Bram Stoker really brought in all the elements of vampires that, are known today, and that inspired all the modern notions about vampires. So, essentially, this book, of course, is about vampires. So it's told in a really unique way. It is told through a bunch of people's letters, diaries, and it's told through telegrams. And so we have a sort of a large cast of characters, and the story is told through their diaries and their letters to each other, which I think is really interesting, and really unique. And it's really fascinating how, each character in this book has his or her own unique writing style. And, still, I couldn't, sum up Bram Stoker's writing style, because each and every character that he writes, the story is told through their diaries and letters and stuff, and they each have their own unique writing style, and Bram Stoker did this immensely well. But what this book is actually about. So it opens up with Jonathan Harker, who goes to visit Count Dracula, who lives in an enormous mansion. He goes to visit him for about a month. And so the first 4 chapters are essentially about Jonathan Harker, living in Dracula's house for about a month. And along the way, he uncovers many secrets about Dracula, about Count Dracula, and of course about the mansion that he lives in. After those first 4 chapters are done, we move to his betrothed, Mina, and she has a friend named Lucy, and so Mina and Lucy are just writing letters to each other. Also another character is Dr. Seward, I think his name is, who takes care of mentally ill people, and he does play a big factor in the story as well, though I don't want to say too much about him without giving too much away, because really, it is difficult to say anything about this book without saying too much. First of all, I loved all the characters in this book. I felt a very strong connection to them, and as you slowly progress through the story, you learn more and more and more about these characters. I think the introduction to this book was excellently done. It was such a great introduction. Bram Stoker doesn't tell you too much, but he doesn't tell you too little either. He tells you just enough about these characters, and about the story that he is telling, and as you slowly progress, you start to become used to the characters, and you learn more about the characters. And I ended up getting really attached to these characters, to the point that when I finished this book, it made me feel very melancholy, because I didn't want it to end. I wanted to spend more time with this book. I wanted this book to never end, and I wanted to spend more time with the characters in it. And it really gives you time to slowly learn about each and every character in this book. So I thought that the beginning of this book was a really, really strong beginning. Those first 4 chapters were really, really good. They really hooked you, got you interested in the story. But then, after those initial 4 chapters, the book just really slowed down a bit until about the halfway point, when things started getting really exciting again, and it really sucked you into the story, and held you there until the very end. And so, when I hit sort of the boring part, if you will. I mean, it wasn't exactly boring. It was just way more slow-paced than the other parts of the book, and it started to get me really uninterested in everything, because it would have, random newspaper clippings about some journey that this ship was taking on the sea, and just, Mina and Lucy's letters, they were talking about completely random things, and I was just sort of thinking, this is so boring. What does this have to do with the actual story? Well, all the things in this book, each and every word is significant to this story that Bram Stoker is trying to tell. Though I did not realize it at the time, all those boring bits, if you will, do come into play later on. And even the random stuff, like the newspaper clippings and elements in Mina and Lucy's letters, all of those things do come into play later on in the book, and actually do play a very important role later on in the book. So if you're reading this book and you hit the part where it's really slow-paced and it seems like nothing's happening that's significant to the story, do not put the book down, because once you get to the middle, it really gets exciting, and all that stuff in the boring part is really significant for later on. There were also very many intense and emotional moments. Like, there's this one moment, I think it was about halfway through the book, where my hands were actually literally sweating. And this book is beautifully written. Now, this book was written very long ago, over 100 years ago. It was written in it was published in 1896. It was probably written several years before that. So if you're wondering, is this book hard to read since it was written so long ago? I would say that for the most part, no, it's not very hard to read. A lot of people, I think, could easily understand this book and get into it. You will occasionally get a paragraph that is a bit dense and that you really have to think over, but for the most part, this book is a very easy read. But also, I loved some of the dialogue, especially in the second half when things got really exciting, and just the dialogue between these characters is so good, and the way this book is written is just so great. Bram Stoker has a beautiful writing style, well, many writing styles, in fact, because all the people in this book have different writing styles, and Bram Stoker did that fantastically. And I want to read you this one passage. I think this is Dr. Seward talking, and I'm not going to give any context for this paragraph because I feel like that might give a little bit away, but I do want to read this paragraph because it doesn't give anything significant away. And I want to read this paragraph with beautiful dialogue. Dr. Seward is talking. He says, "My friends, this is much. It is a terrible task that we undertake, and there may be consequence to make the brave shudder. For if we fail in this our fight, he must surely win. And then where end we? Life is nothing. I heed him not, but to fail here is not mere life or death. It is that we become as him, that we henceforward become foul things of the night like him, without heart or conscience, preying on the bodies and the souls of those we love best. To us forever are the gates of heaven shut, for who shall open them to us again? We go on for all time abhorred by all, a blot on the face of God's sunshine, an arrow in the side of him who died for man. But we are face to face with duty, and in such case must we shrink? For me, I say no. But then I am old, and life with his sunshine, his fair places, his song of birds, his music, and his love lie far behind. You others are young. Some have seen sorrow, but there are fair days yet in store." There's so much beautiful dialogue like this, which some parts of it can be very dense, but for the most part, it is very easy to understand. And just the dialogue was so beautiful in this book, and the prose was so beautiful, and I really think that is part of the reason why I enjoyed this book so much. So, should you read this book? Absolutely. I highly recommend it. I'm giving this one a full-on 10 out of 10 stars. Well, 5, it's usually 5 stars, isn't it? I'm giving it 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, 7 out of 7, 2 out of 2, however you want to rate things. This is a 10 out of 10, and I would highly recommend it. You should definitely read it. So now that I've talked about this book from a non-spoiler perspective, I do want to talk about a few specific things in this book from a spoiler perspective. So if you haven't read this book and you are interested in reading it, and you don't really want to get spoiled for it, then you can leave the video now. Read this book. So, last warning, leave this video now if you haven't read it, and read this book. So, I just got attached to all these characters. I think my favorite character was probably Dr. Seward. His storyline was what interested me the most, with him and his patient who thought that he could basically live forever by consuming more life, which is kind of strange and really very intriguing. So my favorite character was probably Dr. Seward, and then I just feel so bad for Arthur and what he had to go through when Lucy died and when they find out that she's one of the undead. And it was just, I feel so bad for Arthur. And the ending was so bittersweet. I mean, I felt delighted that they had defeated Dracula, but I also felt melancholy because the book was coming to an end. And then all the dialogue is just so great, especially when they gather together the company, the Fellowship of Count Dracula, if you will. They're the Fellowship against Count Dracula, technically. I just loved all those parts when they're, like, having the meetings, and all the speeches that I think the Doctor gives, or it might have been one of the other people, in that Fellowship, but I just loved all the dialogue in this book, so beautiful, and the prose, too, was just, very, very good. So that was Dracula by Bram Stoker. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please hit the like button, and also let me know in the comments what you thought of this book if you've read it. I would really love to hear your thoughts on this book. So, for now, farewell. You can still see my back.